Welcome to the 100 Master Coaches series featuring master coaches from around the world. Let's journey together on this 100 Master Coaches series with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. Diana Ideus has her master's in executive coaching and organizational behavior, and she's a master certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. Diana leverages her coaching, consulting, management, and leadership development to support leaders and entrepreneurs in fast growth for profit companies in tech, finance, and healthcare. Diana founded Hawthorne Union with the belief that there was a better way to do business, and that if we take care of our people, that they will take care of the profits. In addition to her work with leaders and companies, Diana teaches professionals how to coach at the university level and in courses approved by the ICF. Now on to the show.
Hello, and welcome to the 100 Master Coaches show. This is Coach Mal, and today on the show we have Diana Ideus, all the way from California, USA. Welcome to the show, Diana.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome.
I'm glad to be part of your well, I don't know if you call this your dream, but I'm glad to be part of what you're creating.
Thank you.
So
it's a collection. It's a collection of
your collection.
Honoring the wonderful master coaches from all around the world who have walked that journey. You've got so many stories to share and people that you've impacted. So it's a time of honor for you today.
Well, thank you. For you as well.
Thank you. So Diana, where would you like to start today?
Hey, your show, Dealer's Choice.
For a moment when I just said that, it sounded like a coaching session. I'm like, oh, okay.
We're used to that, right?
Yeah, perhaps let's start from an introduction. You know, if you could just tell us some things that obviously we may not know about you, maybe something interesting, something unique.
Sure.
Well, it's just up to you.
Sure. Okay. Well, California born and raised, love the Pacific Ocean. And then I've been to the Pacific Ocean in different parts of the world. So Australia, New Zealand, love travel. So I've been to 6 of the 7 continents, and I do have plans for the 7th, not tickets booked, but plans for the 7th.
Which, just curious, which
I have not been to Antarctica.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little bit longer of a goal. I figure, those are some expensive penguins. So I can push that one out a little bit. One of the kind of most impactful things is just the relationships in my life. I'm a swimmer. So thankful for the things that coaching has brought to me personally and professionally. I mean, I think that's really the amazing thing is how much it changes someone as a person, the act of becoming a coach and then continuing in the coaching world. Yeah. I love Thai food. I love Mexican food. I am excited to kind of have the world hopefully be a safer place as far as travel again. So looking forward to kind of opening that up. And, I'm just so thankful for the gift that, the connection, the way that we are all connected now. I mean, I know that these are sometimes some divisive times where there's a lot of disagreements, but in other ways, for us to be able to speak across the globe, is a pretty cool thing.
Definitely is. It's made all of this possible. We can say what we like with COVID, but COVID has opened up certain doors even for myself. This idea would not have come up if I was fully busy and flying everywhere. This idea came actually when I was sitting at my desk and thinking, what do I do with myself?
Well, and I think that's part of the beauty of coaching too, is to look at everything as an opportunity. And that doesn't mean we don't get our time to mourn, right? Like mourn the lockdown, but also to see, what is possible.
So tell us about that journey, that start of it, perhaps before coaching. What was life like before coaching for you?
So I was raised by teachers, always going to be a teacher. And when I was in the classroom, I cared more about my students' social and emotional well-being than what they were learning. I'm not saying I didn't care about what they were learning, but who they were as people, the whole person, so to speak, which is very aligned with coaching, was more important to me. And I was on the Navajo reservation in New Mexico, amazing opportunity to work with natives in that community and live in that beautiful place. At the same time, I just felt like I wasn't doing my teaching role justice if I was more focused on the humans versus kind of how they were learning and what they were being measured. And at the time, a good friend of mine had gotten a job in San Francisco. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area,
Mm.
coaching college students. And I had never heard of that. I was like, wait, what? What are you doing? And so in 2005, I returned to California and started with Inside Track, which is actually still in existence, as an
Mm.
internal coach. And so the
Wow.
fascinating journey of learning and developing in that way, I was always a camp counselor. I love fun in my learning. And, we should be outside, we should have fun, the kind of the social,
Hmm.
emotional elements, but also the fun. And
Yeah.
so for me, the professional development then of coaches and then managing and training coaches and kind of working with organizations in that space, that was just even a better fit. And, full circle, actually work with a school district now. And so I'm able to actually have
Wow.
an impact on my community, but it's through leadership coaching as opposed to the classroom, which didn't feel like as much of a fit. But like
Mm.
you, probably, I train coaches and I do coaching at the university level and also mentor coaching. So the education didn't leave me, but to go from okay, I was going to be a teacher all my life and now I don't know if this is a fit, to then kind of fall into coaching and not even know
Mm.
until years later that it was an international thing or something that I could get hired at a company for was
Yeah.
was wild to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So at that point of time, you just didn't know about or
Oh
didn't think
no.
of that future or of what the
I had never heard
impact's
of
gonna
it.
be. Okay. Okay.
No, I had no idea. And so it's interesting because I think for me, as coming up as an
Mm.
internal coach, we were in cubicles and they would move us around so we could hear other people coaching. And so it was great because we call it ear hustle. Your ear hustle when you're surrounded by coaches is incredible. And that was my norm. So to me,
Mm.
external years later, when I met an external coach and I started pursuing my international accreditation, to me, the external coaches were like unicorns. I was like, but you do this for a living? Like, this is a thing? Like, I had always been focused on being a teacher. So it wasn't on my radar. And, coaching is a lot more common and known about, I think, now than it was almost 18 years ago. But
Mm.
we started in the same year. We
Yeah,
both started in 2005. We're
that's right.
twins. Yeah.
Very much, very much. I love the water too. Perhaps I don't swim as much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ocean can kill you. Like it's a healthy fear.
Yes, it's too vast, you know. I'd rather swim in the comforts of the swimming pool. Then I know that
Oh,
there's
me
no
too.
there's no sharks around or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. It shouldn't be a life kind of a survival. I feel like they painted the lanes on the bottom for us so we can swim safely.
So many places I want to go with this. Maybe we'll start with what were your thoughts of coaching in those days? And it's like your definition. What is coaching? What was that?
Sure. I mean, honestly, the biggest thing is I couldn't believe people got paid for that. I was like, what do you like? Not as in it's not valued, but this is
Okay.
such a cool thing. I can't believe this could be my job. And to be able to lean in and at the time I was coaching mostly first generation college students coming
Hmm.
from
Wow.
low socioeconomic backgrounds. So
Okay.
being able to what I call front row seat, to front
Yeah.
row seat for someone trying to realize their dream and have that be your job. Like I felt like I won the lottery. It was just such an incredible thing. And honestly, in many ways, I do still feel like that we get to be a part of people's
Mm.
lives and help them
Mm.
through whether it's their traumas or their promotions or it's just such an amazing thing. Because I
Yeah.
was taught in a not ICF approved program, because I was an internal coach, there
Hmm.
was consulting mixed in. So I did
Okay.
learn in the kind of consulting coaching,
Yeah.
yes, it's the coaching questions and the active listening, but we also did kind of set the agenda and make sure we were focused on certain things or update
Yeah.
people on certain things. So actually, my ICF journey almost 10 years later was challenging for me because I had to scrub the consulting out. And then
Mm.
after scrubbing the consulting out and spending 10 years focusing on getting my MCC, then being out in the world where my clients often like that consulting back in, that was something that was challenging for me related to voice, right? How do we show up as ourselves?
Yeah.
How are we showing up to be credentialed? And then also like, what are our clients asking us for?
Mm. You brought up an amazing point. The dimensions of showing up, right? Would you
Mhm.
like to talk a little bit more about that differences that you were saying just a moment ago?
So I think the thing is that oftentimes what can be challenging to those who aren't familiar with the ICF or the international credential is just how what I call pure coaching is
Mm.
to really separate it out from other disciplines, management, therapy, consulting, etc.
Yeah, that's right.
And so when I'm training coaches, it's helping them understand, okay, how do you look at coaching as the purest version? It's almost like when we breathe air, it's only a certain amount of oxygen. But if you go to an oxygen bar and you get that pure oxygen, it's an amazing experience, right? So kind of
True.
there's an artistry, I
That's
think,
good.
in the ICF coaching and the MCC coaching. And then out in the world, it's figuring out, based on what your client wants, based on what you have to
Yeah.
offer, how might you adapt or hybridize your offering once it's infused with those coaching elements.
Mm. So in what I'm hearing, Diana, not all of the coaching mastery at MCC may be that applicable for that particular client. So when you say you need to customize it to that particular client, are you saying that?
That's the feedback I got in the kind of the
Mm,
tail end of my pursuit of MCC. So what was interesting is actually at the time I was working for a consulting firm. So they
mm,
wanted me to make more recommendations and consult more, even though I was coaching for them. And so it was interesting because pivoting over to my direct reports and who I trained for ICF coaching, I was like, I am in a space opposite of what
yeah.
opposite what I'm telling you now. And then also, I was in both individual and group coaching engagements. And the takeaways from the client were we
Mm,
want more of your recommendations. And so that was challenging for me because I was
mm,
really working on how do I amplify the client's voice and really hold them as resourceful and whole in
yes.
order to achieve my ICF credential. But my clients were wanting more of me. Now, some of that may have just been the nuance that I didn't
Mm,
know what my voice was as an MCC yet, but I do think that there, at least in certain orgs or certain levels of leadership, sometimes we get asked as coaches, often we get asked as coaches for things
yeah.
outside of the coaching scope.
Yeah, that's true. And when that happens for you, is that a matter of choice at that point of time, or do you look at other parameters to make that decision for yourself?
Yeah, so for me, it's choice and judgment call. And as I train coaches, it's also helping them understand the plant has conditions in the greenhouse, but outside of the
Mm,
greenhouse, some of those conditions may change. Are we sustainably taking coaching practices and infusing them? Is it important to have kind of pure coaching as the ICF defines it? I think for those who achieve MCC, we've shown that we're able to master that, and
yeah.
the way that we can work with clients and get there faster because of that pure coaching. But it was also, if a client wants pure consulting from me, may not be a fit
Mm,
because I can't help myself. What does success look like? Where would you like to start? What's in your control? I'm happy
That's
to
it.
share my opinions, but what do you think? Right? It's like I can't help it.
Yeah.
The coaching is there, but I find
Yeah.
often, for people who are newer to the
Mm,
craft, or for those maybe PCCs who aren't sure if they want to pursue MCC or
yeah.
not, I think sometimes the purity of the coaching approach for MCC doesn't feel like a fit. My take
Mm,
on that is I wanted to be the best that I could be. And if this is how the ICF defines the best to be, then I wanted to do that. Also, scrubbing the consulting out of my coaching so I could get my PCC was very painful to me
wow.
and also very illuminating. And so I feel like, growth isn't always easy or smooth, right? I mean, we probably wish it was more often. And
Yeah.
so for me, it was important to say, what does it mean to be a master of this craft? And then and every master coach will tell you that they are still learning, right? Like that's
Mm,
part of it. But it was important to me to kind of grapple with those definitions so I could figure out what that sounded like.
yeah.
And then I'm all about voice and also authenticity. because I think it's important that we have a diversity of perspectives and styles. So, it's like, as we look at for the International Coaching Federation, there's programs all over the world that qualify for that credential, right?
Yeah.
And they bring that different kind of diversity and focus.
Yeah, so true. And just as you were saying, the work that you've been doing, working with younger coaches, some of them are going for the credentials as they move from that level of ACC and then to that PCC. What would that difference maker be for each of the levels?
Yeah, so I feel like from ACC to PCC, ACC is, I call it blood in the water. Like, if you have a topic, they're like, oh, when are you going to do that by? And how are you going to measure that? And, oh, you talked about time management. Do you have a plan? Right? Like, there's an intensity there. And then I've heard PCC referred to as the virtuoso because, there's a more kind of elegant and perhaps eloquent language. And sometimes there's recommendations, but they have more experience. So there's a more polish and smoothness, and they're a little bit more comfortable. I think the transition for MCC is that, truly letting all of your experience and ideas and expertise and insight go, and really being about the client in a whole different way. And then also figuring out, how do you hold the client in that high regard, but then also share your reflections and intuitions and insight so that you're still advancing them. That was difficult for me.
Yeah. Same. Very difficult to kind of silence the different voices that are coming. To see them in that regard also was kind of tough, even though one of my principles is, believe in human potential. But that's a fallacy in both sides, right? If you believe in them too much, in all of them, and then where is that space of your intuition telling you, you're sensing that there is a place where you need to challenge them now about that? So there's that whole mix. I call it the dance, right? And that dance it's ever changing. It's ever moving. It's like a flow on that river dance floor. So lots of things that are happening at the same time. Diana, if you look back at your career right now, what will be some key moments that kind of said, you look back, these are the little milestones that help you perhaps get better as a coach and also as a person, and finding that voice, as you said a couple of times now?
Yeah. It's such a good question, right? Not surprised, Master Coach. You ask good questions. So for me, definitely the act of becoming a coach was life-changing. And then also transitioning in that particular role to become a manager of coaches, and looking at, it's one thing to manage people, it's another thing to manage coaches, especially when you're developing them on their coaching. So that was transformational. Then later at that particular organization, I built coaching programs with clients. So then that infused more kind of consulting in there, kind of taking the things out of the greenhouse. So that really taught me a lot. And that actually correlated with my move from California to Nashville, which I say made me a nicer person because in the South, and also I was working in Deep South, I was working with Alabama. The Southern United States is more known for being conversational and polite and asking you how you are and engaging in that way. So that was an interesting kind of personal location cultural shift in addition to style change. Then, pursuing the ICF credential. And so then, continuing on in that master's program changed what coaching meant to me. And then also working in organizations and beginning to work with private clients and also be an internal coach for a different organization. And then last, but definitely not least, was then segueing into going from internal coach to kind of contract coaching and external coach. So becoming one of the unicorns that I used to marvel at.
And that, if I can use that voice modulation that needed to shift. To tell me about that bit in that context of that changes of that voice.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about being part of an internal coaching program that was really committed to development is they changed the coaching model all the time. So we were always learning different ways to coach. And I would actually think that I really benefited from learning so many coaching models and styles because, I do think voice is really important. I think, not there are so many coaches out there and there's so many clients out there. And if we're being authentic to ourselves and showing up how we want to show up, then that also enables and supports how other people want to show up. So for me, it was that consulting switch, but then also, how am I showing up in a space where if and when I need to be only a coach, or if I'm a coach and an employee and a manager and a consultant.
Wow.
So kind of looking at the different hats that we wear, especially if we're internal coaches, and also have that kind of management aspect. My voice changed as well a lot on my MCC pursuit. So thankfully, my mentor pointed out to me that I was asking great questions, but I wasn't making reflections. And part of the reason I wasn't doing that is because as a strong personality, I didn't want to hijack my client's agenda on accident. But then I was kind of muzzling myself and my own voice. And she was like, well, you can't get MCC with a muzzle on. And I couldn't,
Wow.
I had to figure out what does that sound like? And I would actually say that to me, that's the distinction between when someone's working on MCC and when they've kind of crossed that threshold, is figuring out how does it still sound like you, but still meet the highest standard of the ICF? Because then it's kind of, you're not taking it off the rack. It's been a little bit more custom fit.
I hear you. I love that metaphor on the muzzle.
Oh yeah. Because it was like, okay, I'm holding the client as resourceful and whole, and I don't want to interrupt them and I don't want to get in the way. And it's just that, but that was part of my journey. I am not a calm learner. I have a tendency to just kind of like storm the gates and like ram into the gates. And like, when I'm calm, I'll look for another door or maybe try to find another way in. But, as I was learning how to coach and as I was up leveling my coaching skills, there were definitely things they were frustrating to me because I didn't know how to do them. And I think academically, I'm privileged to not have had a lot of struggle academically. So as I kind of stormed the gates in coaching, it was like, why can't I get this? Why can't I understand this?
Yeah.
But that's also part of why it was important to me to continue on the journey and to continue to be better at it, because it's not like the growth stops.
Were there any points in time when you kind of said, this is too hard, let's just forget about it?
So when I failed MCC, which I think is just important, it's hard for people to hear that, I think, because sometimes it's daunting for people. But at the same time, I think it's important to say, like, hey, failure is part of the process. Like we're just still learning, right? Yeah. When I failed MCC and like straight out fail, both calls fail, I understood for the first time why people didn't pursue it. Like, because I had never understood before, why don't people pursue this? Like, why isn't it, something that they're looking for? And I was actually talking to one of my clients and I was like, well, I'm going to reapply. And then if I fail again, I'll reapply again. But then maybe it's just not meant to be, right? Like if I'm doing all the things I can do, like maybe it's just not a match. And she looked at me and she was like, really? And I was like, oh no, you're right. I'm going to keep going until I get it.
I'm just going to storm the gates continuously.
I'm going to storm the gates. Yeah. Hey, I'm not a calm learner. So it's like, I take it very seriously, but I learned fast because of that. So, and also I think what that revealed for me is it's just, I'm not someone that usually asks for help. Even though I'm in a helping profession and I love being there and supporting people, but there are those moments, those humbling moments. And I would argue that I'm a better coach and a better mentor because I didn't pass the first round. It would have been nice. Like that was painful learning that I would have happily have opted out of, but true. I'm better for it.
Yeah. As you said early on, we've got things in similar. I've also failed. So that there's so much of that person in the mirror that you've got to look at and like, you sure? Maybe that person, the assessor, was wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
I had to go through that journey as well. Interesting. Now that you've become MCC, what's shifting for you?
Mm, that's a great question. It's an interesting thing. I think at first it was, okay, what happens now? What does this
Mm,
look like now? Because it
yeah.
had been something I had been pursuing. I've been pursuing MCC for 10 years and then, started PCC before that. So it was like, what does this look like? And I
Yeah.
think it morphs into, okay, how do I serve? How do I serve and support other people with this? And then
Mm.
also, what am I learning and how am I still learning this? So I know as chapter president, so I'm the ICF president of Los Angeles chapter. So I know share that with you and some of your other guests. So looking at,
Congratulations.
how, thank you, thank you. But how our theme this year is inclusive community. So how are we welcoming in coaches and coach curious? And then if people are deciding that credentialing is for them, how are we
Yeah.
supporting them through that process? But then also from a business building perspective, how are we supporting clients to understand what coaching is and for coaches to make a living? Like I think it's a magical thing for us to make a living supporting other people. And yeah, and then as far as my own development in business, I've had a little bit more kind of time to be creative and figure out, okay, what do I want to create as far as products or what do I want the business to look like? Just
Mm,
because that was such a primary goal that now having achieved that, it's like, okay, so now how are you going to use it? And how are you going to continue to learn?
Is it this important thing about business? Because
Mm.
that was something I was just thinking through while you were talking before. Tell us a little bit about that business venture thing. I know you said you were internal, but when was that moment when you said, I want to kind of do this external bit as well?
Mm. So what's interesting, it was not a moment of choice.
Okay.
So yeah, there's actually a whole series that we have on the podcast Cross Street Coaching called
Okay.
The Reluctant Entrepreneur. Because for me, there was reluctance there
Yes.
about taking that leap. I was like, this is not my dream. This is not my thing. Um, I would actually argue, though, that perhaps that reluctance served me in making sure that when I did take the leap, that it was more
Mm,
sustainable.
mm,
So just kind of looking at that. I do think that I coach a lot around money and how people feel about their money, the emotions, the shame of it, whether it's from a corporate setting and looking at like, where's the money coming from? Where's it going? How do you make more of it kind of thing? But also on the personal side as well, it's something that a lot of people just aren't comfortable with.
yeah.
And so I also, when I work with and train other coaches, is something I
Mm,
talk about as well, because
yeah.
most people come to coaching because they want to support people, they want to help people grow. But at the
Yeah.
same time, so Sister Irene Krauss, no margin, no mission. If you can't pay your bills, how much can you really support someone else? And how much can
True.
you really be there when people need you? So I do think that that's something that's important as we look at like the democratization of coaching,
Mm,
as we
mm,
look at, diverse voices in coaching,
yeah.
that also looking at where's the money and who's funding this and how do we
Mm,
make this a sustainable life path, is really
mm.
important.
Is there, I'm just curious about that voice. I'll come back to that voice again. Is
Mhm.
there a need to come up with a different voice if you want to make it, successful as a business person as well? Do you think?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think it's about, but this is some of my kind of own platform and opinion. I think it's about authentically aligning with like you
Mm-hmm.
and how you want to be. For some people that's niching, for other people it's not. And then also finding the people, the services, the industries that are a best fit. Because in
Mm,
reality, most of coaching business is through referrals.
yeah,
So it means that there's been a connection between
that's
you and
true.
another person and you and a group.
Yeah.
And then that potentially crosses industries. So I don't obviously there's ways that we align on ethics and competencies and what are good questions and things like that. But I actually think that we have something to contribute,
Yeah.
and if we can find the thing that we contribute, then that's potentially a business differentiator.
Mm,
I know
mm.
someone who I work with who would not necessarily agree, but that's where I stand on that.
Thank you. And as you grew as a business owner, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think you needed to shift to kind of get further on that business route?
Mm. For me, it was a big identity shift because
Mm,
thankfully I already knew a lot of the nuts and bolts because I was a business coach and I did both coaching and consulting on the financial side.
yeah,
So thankfully I knew a lot of the brass tacks of kind of what it would look like to actually have coaching as a business.
yeah.
But I just didn't identify as a entrepreneur. I didn't identify as an external coach. And so that was an adjustment. And it's different. Your schedule's different, your life's different, your taxes are different.
That's
I've
true.
been a leader for most of my career, but being a leader in my own business like feels different. And it's just kind of maybe that's the growth. I guess that's the growth path that happened for me after
Mm,
MCC. It was more I was already a business owner before I became MCC, but it probably a deeper leaning out of the
mm,
contract coaching and into kind of my own business.
yeah,
And whew, that was some growth edges.
yeah, so true. Um, ICF, such a great community of coaches. I particularly joined ICF just 2 years after 2005.
Mm.
And I felt already needed to be, in community with other coaches. And then there are some who are just maybe not there yet with ICF. What could be your thoughts on that to kind of help them see a different light, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I always think it has to have a business case. And so if people aren't seeing, there's so many ways to learn.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so if someone's dedicated to their learning and development, but that path for them doesn't have the ICF path, I don't have a problem with that
Yeah,
as long as they're being responsible,
it's
right? Like
true.
be responsible. Because so much of coaching is we have to explain what coaching is and potentially clean up after other coaches that, people have met and say, okay, this is what it is and isn't.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think that there does need to be a business case. It's interesting though, as contract coaching companies are becoming at least
Mm,
definitely more common in America, if not worldwide.
yeah.
What may happen is that the credential is actually needed and ends up being kind of a needed differentiator to get that work. For me, being a younger coach and then also entering the industry and coaching executives sooner versus later, it was something one I wanted to learn, but it was also a differentiator I needed because I was competing for clients with people who were 30 years my senior, who had potentially been in the role of the person that I was looking to coach. So it
Yeah.
really helped set me apart. But I feel very strongly like, there's a lot of learning that you can do for free. There's a lot of learning that you can do from the ICF for free.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
really is a matter of kind of choice and I think business case. Though, of course, I appreciate anything we can do to uphold the quality of coaching.
Mm. Has things changed for you personally, taking on the helm as ICF chapter president?
Yes. I mean, it's new. It's
Yeah.
new. I'm just, I was on the board previously as a facilitator and then also as president elect.
Okay.
But what's challenging for me is, some of the kind of decision making and the authority expectations needed when you're
Mm.
president.
Mm.
For my kind of natural collaborative leadership style and also being an MCC, so more inclined to ask questions than answer them, that's been an adjustment.
Thank
So
you.
it's
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
so it's kind of an interesting
true.
adjustment. And I think, and I'm so thankful for the board kind of moving with me through that. And I also see as I connect with other presidents for an initiative that we'll have for International Coaching Week and just inviting other people like, hey,
Mm.
if we build this thing, do you want in on this? Like, it's like, let's do this together. Let's put pro bono coaching out there in the world together. It's interesting because people are like, oh, thank you. Like, thank you. So, ultimately what I see, like the ICF is, yes, I'm so thankful for the credentials and standards and the development aspects, but it's also a community of people
Mm.
committed to doing good things.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really, I was asked to serve. I'm thankful to be recognized to serve. I think we'll be happy to be past president and be able to amplify and hold up another leader when it's time. Thank
All
you.
the very best for this
Thank you.
term and also for your next term as past
Thank
president.
you.
Yeah. I'm sure there were people of influence in your life throughout this whole journey of coaching for you, right? 18 years. Do you want to name a couple? If not name them, perhaps tell us stories about them and their impact in your life.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it really started thankfully, my parents were very dedicated to their development,
Nice.
both as teachers. My dad was also an entrepreneur and as business owner. So constantly that kind of sense of growth. And then, both having been in therapy and working with other people to just constantly be that kind of drive to be better. So I was raised with that, and I'm so thankful for that. There is just a number, my kind of inside track family. I won't name names. I won't name names, but so many people who were with me kind of along the way and helped me in the situations where sometimes our clients are in crisis, and those get to be dark spaces. And so the coaches that are with us to help us know like what to say, what to do, and then also how do we support each other as those who support others and make sure that that's sustainable. So I'm really thankful from a community perspective on that. And then having been in multiple chapters, just, with the Nashville chapter and Los Angeles chapter, the way that people gift their time and their insight and are willing to shape, answer questions and about business and about coaching, I'm so thankful for. And then the last boss I worked with in corporate was coach trained and also just always asked great questions. And so was a very impactful leader for me as well. So I feel very thankful. I've had a lot of great leaders who I think embodied a lot of that kind of coaching mentality of support and challenge and questions, and also kind of the amplifying and celebration.
And here you are. So amazing, Diana. I really, really appreciate you being on the show and you sharing your thoughts. Just a couple more before we take a bow.
Sure.
The future of coaching. It's obviously here right now as we speak with AI and robots and what have you that's coming your way. What do you think is that future looking like?
Yeah, so it is interesting as we do the AI component, but also, we thought when books went online that people wouldn't buy books anymore, and when universities went online that they wouldn't go to school anymore. So, I think that there's value, right? There's value in the automation and the speed, but then also, it's kind of like when something isn't working and you're like, can I just talk to a person? Like, I just want to talk to a person. And sometimes we don't want to talk to a person. I'm like, no, I don't want to talk to a person. I want you to fix this for me, little bot. I see the future of coaching. There's a great kind of, and I don't know how much I speak for just the United States versus worldwide, but at least in the United States, I see a democratization of coaching that's not just for executives anymore, but how do we look at, like, for students, how do we look at for multiple levels in the organization, and not just having it be this kind of elite service. And then also there's a drive towards, coaches of color, and how do we make sure that we are also supporting coaches that come from different backgrounds to also bring that diversity and equity and inclusion into the coaching space. And I do really appreciate and commend the ICF's commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging, because that's so important, especially for us as a global organization. So I do hope that there will be more voices and that the coaching can be available at more levels, because I also do think that that's part of what makes it financially sustainable. And then it'll be interesting to see what that does from a credentialing perspective as well, because I actually think that that will help those who have invested in ICF credential be set apart and differentiated. As the kind of market share increases, people will potentially be looking for something to differentiate.
As we come to almost a close, Diana, if you had a wish to make, magic wand, for example, what would you do for coaching with that magic wish?
Well, that's a good question. My hope would be accessibility, to make it would be great if coaching was accessible to anyone at any time. It's support And people don't always have that support in their family or in their environment, or they may be going somewhere that other people don't in their life don't know how to support them. And so, I have been supported all of my life, and it's part of why it's a dream job for me to be able to turn around and do that for other people. So I would say kind of accessibility to quality, of course. But it would be great if it was just something that people could kind of lean into and expect us all to get better at things and be better to each other.
Thank you. Any last words that you want to leave behind for our listeners today?
So I'm curious. I mean, it's hard for me to just answer questions and not ask them. So I would be curious if anything in particular is resonating with you or you would like to share.
Oh, wow. No one's turned the table on me yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't, not in a bad way. It's just we're normally in the question role.
First and foremost, I just want to say to you, Diana, thank you. Thank you for finding your voice.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for not just looking at a unicorn and said, that's a unicorn and I'm not going to be one. You have this tenacious drive to everything in life. And I think that is very commendable. I think coaches listening in, that is extremely needed, not just as a coach, but also as a business entrepreneur. It's that drive, it's that push, it's that resilience, that inner belief that things are possible. And I think that's the whole positivity that you bring.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's the first thing, Diana. I think the point that you brought up about that diversity, I 100% agree with that. And I've seen that happen through the years and how it has opened up a lot more. And if we talked about the coaching side of things, I would love to see that being expanded to the different parts of the world. So it doesn't seem like a foreign thing coming in. It's like the English language being taught, if you know what I mean, those days. The coaching language, as you say, being accessible, I think that's the most important thing. Not just the art and science of it, but just the language of it. Just how can we put in parts of that into our everyday speak, right? As we bring it out there, how we treat people will begin to change if we change the languaging of how we talk to one another. So I think it starts there. And that whole belief in human potential, if that starts there, then it'd be a much more beautiful one. Thanks for your question.
Yeah, thank you. I love hearing your thought. Hey, it's your show. I want to hear some of you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being on the show once again, Diana.
Thank you for having me. I so appreciate it.
Well, this has been the 100 Master Coaches show today with Diana and myself, Mel. Wherever you are, take care, stay safe, and continue to pursue the best that you can be. Till the next time, bye-bye.
You have been watching the 100 Master Coaches series with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. Brought to you by Catalyst Coach. www.catalystcoach.live. We will be right back with our next Master Coach on the 100 Master Coaches series.